Okay, ready for a deep dive that might just turn things upside down a little. We're cracking open Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck, specifically chapters 1, 7, and 9.
Yeah, this one's a wild ride. I mean, where else do you start with a guy, a successful writer no less, who wants "don't try" on his tombstone?
Right. It's Charles Bukowski, by the way.
Yeah.
Talk about a head scratcher. But Manson uses that to get us thinking about authenticity.
Like, it's not about being a jerk to the world.
Not at all.
It's more like being so genuinely okay with yourself.
Who cares what anyone else thinks?
Exactly.
Which I guess is where this whole not giving effect thing comes in, though it does sound a bit harsh at first,
Oh,
right?
for sure, it's counterintuitive. But the further you get into it, it's less about not caring at all, more about being picky with what does matter.
Choosing your battles, so to speak.
Yeah, like he's handing us this filter for our lives. Here, figure out what's really worth your energy. Because, let's face it, we only have so much to go around.
Oh, absolutely. He makes this point, I think it's in chapter 1, with his grandma in a grocery store. Remember that one?
Oh, could I forget? Losing her mind over a coupon.
And you're thinking, it's a few cents, lady. What's the big deal?
But that's his point, isn't it? It wasn't about the money itself. It was what that coupon represented to her, maybe. Like this tiny bit of control in a life where she felt she had none makes you think what we're holding on to too tightly.
Our own metaphorical coupons, right?
Mm.
So how do we know which ones are actually worth it?
Well, that's where values come in, right? Manson would say, finding what truly matters to you. And then, this is key, aligning your actions with that. He calls it practical enlightenment at one point.
Practical enlightenment.
Yeah, it's like life's gonna have good and bad, no getting around it. So instead of chasing some impossible constant happiness.
We should be more deliberate about what kind of hard stuff we're willing to deal with.
Exactly. He even says we should be choosing our struggles.
That's a tough sell, though, isn't it?
Duh.
Who chooses something difficult?
Well, think about it. Would an athlete get anywhere if they only did the easy workouts?
Good point.
It's the tough stuff that makes you stronger, but it has to be aligned with what you actually care about. Like, Manson uses the example of wanting to be a rock star.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that.
He loved the idea of it, but hated the actual work, the practicing, the performing.
And there's a great quote in there, something like, who you are is defined by what you're willing to struggle for.
Powerful, right?
Makes you think about what you're actually willing to put in the work for, not just what sounds cool.
Right, and that's where self-awareness is huge. Are we after something because it's really us? Or just a fantasy? What are we showing up for day after day, even when it's hard? That's where those values come back in.
So we're choosing our struggles, but what about when things just go sideways? Even if we're laser focused on our values, we're going to hit bumps in the road, right?
Definitely. And that's where Manson's view on failure comes in, which is, well, pretty unexpected.
Yeah, he's not afraid of the F word, that's for sure.
Not at all. He practically embraces it, calls it the way forward, even. There's this whole thing about how graduating college right into the Great Recession.
Or a rough time to be job hunting.
Right, but he actually sees it as a good thing in retrospect. Forced him to really confront what he was made of, what he could do when the easy path was gone.
That takes some serious resilience, though, to see it that way. Most people would just be discouraged.
He'd say that resilience is a muscle you build. He talks about Picasso, right? Incredibly talented, but also just kept creating no matter what. Never let the fear of messing up stop him.
That's got to be freeing as an artist, to have that mindset.
And that's his point. It wasn't about every Picasso being a masterpiece. He was driven by the joy of doing it, period.
So finding that thing, that passion that's so you, that even if you stumble, it doesn't kill the whole thing.
Right. And it ties back into those values again. What's your why that keeps you going even when it's tough?
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to say be fearless, but actually doing it.
Well, that's why he talks about action before motivation. This idea that you don't wait around to feel inspired. You just start, even if it's tiny.
You act your way into feeling it, basically.
Exactly. Build momentum.
Uh-huh.
And he actually connects this to a Japanese concept, kaizen. It's about small, continuous improvements.
So less about some big dramatic gesture.
More about just showing up consistently, even if it's just baby steps each time. Adds up over time, right?
Okay, so we're taking action, getting comfortable with messing up, but then chapter 9 throws us a real curveball. We're talking about death now.
Yeah, that one gets real deep, real fast. He talks about losing his friend, and it really makes him confront this idea that our time is limited.
That'll do it, for sure. Makes you reevaluate.
And that's heavy stuff, for sure. But he's also saying it can be really freeing.
Freeing how?
Well, if you really know you don't have forever, what becomes important? It forces you to figure out what your life should be about, legacy even.
It's like, are you making the most of the time you do have?
Exactly. He calls it death terror, this anxiety we have about being forgotten. So we chase achievements, stuff, other people's approval.
Trying to build something that'll outlast us.
But he says real freedom comes from letting go of that need for control, being okay with the fact that our time here is finite, and that's all right. There's even a kind of beauty in that.
Wow. So how do we actually do that? Go from scared of dying to finding it freeing?
He's got this analogy, it's great, about the Cape of Good Hope. So you're literally standing at the edge of the world, right? This physical A&D metaphorical edge. And you just feel how vast everything is, how small you are in comparison.
I bet that's both terrifying and kind of amazing at the same time.
Exactly. He's not saying to be obsessed with death, but to let that awareness fuel you to make your life mean something.
So it's a motivator, in a way, to be more intentional with your time.
Right, because what do you really have to lose? We're all on the same path, just got to figure out how to enjoy the ride while it lasts, you know?
Choose what you give a feck about and really live it.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered some heavy stuff today. If someone's only going to take away one thing from Manson and this whole not giving a feck idea, what would you say it should be?
That's tough. There's so much in here. But I keep coming back to this idea of choosing your values.
Instead of just accepting whatever's thrown at us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like we have a choice. Manson's just reminding us to actually make it. To say, this is what matters to me, and build your life around that.
Instead of someone else's blueprint.
Exactly. It's realizing your time and energy are valuable and deciding where you want to spend them, what's worth fighting for, and what can you let go of.
It's like he's handing us back control, you know?
Totally. Which can be scary too, right? It means taking responsibility for your own life, your own choices. But that's also where the freedom is.
To make your own. So, just to be clear, it's not about being a jerk, not caring about anything.
No. It's the opposite. It's caring so much about the right things that the rest kind of fades away.
That you don't have the energy to give them.
Right. Reminds me of that Steve Jobs quote, "Your time is limited. Don't waste it living someone else's life."
Perfect example. It's about being picky with your time, your energy.
With your life, really. Don't let it get eaten up by stuff you don't actually care about.
So find the courage to say, this is what success looks like for me. Embrace it, even if it's messy.
Because it's those messy bits, the struggles, the times you are truly you, that make it all worthwhile.
I like that. So as we wrap up here, got to leave our listeners with something to chew on.
Okay, how's this? If you knew you only had a short time left, would you give a fike about the same things, make the same choices?
Ooh, that's a good one. Really makes you examine things, doesn't it?
It's a call to action. Life's short, unpredictable. We get to choose how to spend it. So choose wisely, choose bravely, choose you.
Because in the end, that's what matters. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And remember, you are already enough.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You are already enough.